The Academy of Esports podcast is powered by LeagueSpot. LeagueSpot, your brand, your league, your way. Welcome to the Academy of Esports podcast. I'm your host, James O'Hagan, and today I'm excited to be talking to one of the original greats in European esports, Stuart Dempsey, founder and CEO of GamerFest Dublin. I would guess we could call it the second home, if you will, my second home being Ireland. I first met Stuart years ago. We got together to have a conversation about all things esports related, but it was around I'm a huge GAA fan as well too, but one of my favorite teams, Connacht Rugby, which if you don't know the team, it is probably one of the premier rugby teams in the world. But Stuart has a 20-year career in marketing and brand management across a range of B2B and B2C roles behind him, including a master's in marketing and practices from NUIG, or as they call it today, Galway University, which happens to be where my family hails from in Ireland. In 2017, he established the first GamerFest, an event that has only gotten stronger each year and expects to reach 10,000 visitors in the next 18 months. And today he's gearing up for the next GamerFest taking place May 27th and 28th in Dublin, easily one of the most successful annual gaming events in all of Ireland and beyond. Stuart, thank you for being a guest today on the Academy of Esports podcast.
Quite the introduction, James. Thank you.
Well, let's jump in with a quick icebreaker so the audience can get to know you a little bit. And I love questions like this because they're usually not something that people think about or get insights into. So here we go. A door opens and fog fills the archway with mist. A crowd holds its breath. We're at GamerFest, obviously. As your shadow appears in the distance, striding towards your grand entrance. And as you're coming out, what song is the DJ playing?
I think that would have to be a U2 song. So let's go with Where the Streets Have No Name. And incidentally, they've just started playing that when the Irish rugby team is coming out in the stadium now in recent matches. I was up there for the Six Nations, so they're using that quite a bit. So I think I'll go with that, Where the Streets Have No Name.
That's a very interesting choice. And I love, first of all, Stuart, I love that you went to the Six Nations because I'm so jealous. Which match did you attend?
I was very fortunate this year. I got to both home games, which was the France match and the English match where they won the Grand Slam. So it was a week of celebrations here. It was a massive occasion. So I was thrilled to be there.
That, again, for people who don't understand international rugby, I mean, you're talking about top five teams, I guess we could say, though England has fallen on hard times a bit lately, but France definitely has not fallen on hard times. And Ireland, I believe, is still ranked number one in the world. I love, though, that Ireland is ranked number one in a sport that the British invented. So I'm totally fine with that. I have no problems with that.
Well, there you go. It was a special time. We've only won a Grand Slam, I think, 3 times in about 100 years. We've won a couple of them recently enough, but this was the first time we won it in Dublin, in our home stadium. So usually they've won it when they're at an away fixture in England or Scotland, and it hasn't quite been the same. So this was the first time, full celebrations in Dublin, Saturday evening kickoff. So it was a hell of an occasion, very, very memorable. So yeah, onwards to the World Cup now later in the year.
And while I could make this a podcast just about rugby, I have to say that one of my favorite memories of Irish rugby was, I believe it was 2018 when Johnny Sexton, playing in France, the Irish forwards were just crashing the ball at the end. And not like in American football where you only have a limited time. Once the time is up, until you lose control of the ball, the game continues. And I want to say they went through 42 phases, which in American football would be like running the ball 40 something times, getting very little ground. But then they pitched the ball back to Johnny Sexton and he kicked this beautiful drop kick to defeat the French at the end of play. It's just one of my favorite rugby memories of all time. So I would just wish it had happened in Ireland and not France.
Yeah, well, another iconic moment. So you know your rugby, James, there's no doubt about that. We'll have to get you over now. Next time you're over, we'll hit a match for sure.
Absolutely. But again, our podcast today is unfortunately not about rugby in Ireland. We're talking about esports in Ireland, and honestly, I did a podcast interview a few years ago when I was in Ireland, talking about the state of Irish rugby. Sorry, now rugby's on the brain. Irish esports, and it seems that even in the 3 years since that podcast interview, the state of things have changed. And I know that some people may be surprised about Irish esports development. The country is home to some of the most respected facilities in the world, including the Lero Institute in Limerick, where I do have some friends there working, especially looking at neuroscience and gaming. It's also one of the biggest tech and gaming company hubs in the world, Riot's Dublin headquarters, where they have Project Striker. Project Striker, for those of you who don't know, is an amazing cloud-based facility that allows for all production to happen in a central location from around the world. They can do videos on the fly. Again, 24/7 esports broadcasting. The government of Ireland, which loves to bring in business, recently introduced a digital gaming tax credit of up to 32% per qualifying game for development. I believe it's up to 8 million euro is what they will allow. And then could you give us, I guess, knowing all this, and again, a lot of people think of Ireland, they think of the movie The Quiet Man, they think of green fields and sheep and, cliffs of Moher and all these things. But Ireland is much more than that. Could you give our audience a 90-second macro view or pitch, I suppose, as to what the esports industry looks like in Ireland and why U.S. companies should be focusing their interests there?
Well, I think it's definitely incredibly exciting times in Ireland for gaming and esports. There's no doubt about that. There's a number of factors at play there. I think one thing that's actually very important was the pandemic, because you've probably seen it yourself. What the pandemic did was it put gaming and esports on the radar of a lot of stakeholders that wouldn't necessarily have known the scale of it, the size of it, the size of the industry, for example. So with esports over here during the pandemic, just like the US, suddenly there was no live sports on TV. So the sports channels were covering sim racing with Lando Norris in Formula One. They were covering FIFA soccer tournaments online. So suddenly it was on the consciousness of people much, much more. In the meantime, then you referred to it there, the government has announced the game development tax credit. Now that's incredibly important because it demonstrates now that government and senior stakeholders are recognizing the value and the potential of gaming and esports in terms of economic growth, job creation for Ireland for the next 20 years. And, I think one thing that Ireland has demonstrated over the last 20 or 30 years, that when we identify a sector in which we see value, we can leverage a very, very coordinated approach to roll out that industry very, very successfully. So if you look at the medical device sector in Ireland, for example, we have 9 of the 10 biggest medical device companies, and we have a whole range of indigenous companies working off of them. Likewise, the pharmaceutical sector, more recently, the tech sector. So, we have Microsoft in Ireland. They've been here for many, many years. They've over 4,000 staff here with a fabulous campus. Apple are here. I think they have over 4,000 staff here as well at their manufacturing facility. So I think from the government's point of view, and we're engaging with them a lot with GamerFest to show what our role is in terms of developing this industry. Our message is that, the games industry, the esports industry is a fantastic opportunity now for Ireland for the next 10, 20 years. We need to mobilize all the resources we have to leverage that opportunity. So, for example, we've seen Riot Games now come to Dublin. You mentioned the broadcast centre. I was fortunate enough to be at the launch of that. It's an absolutely amazing piece of technology, absolutely cutting edge. They're developing 3 of them worldwide. One of them was allocated to Dublin, which is fantastic. So there's incredible potential. I think it's a very, very exciting time. And we're on a really good trajectory now. We're still at the start of the journey, make no bones about it. But when you see government tax credits, when you see interest from senior stakeholders, it's very, very exciting times.
Well, and to speak too of the country is growing. I mean, this is a country that at last census, I believe, was finally back to 5 million, and every county in Ireland across the country had growth. So there are people wanting to come to Ireland, businesses, but also it's also attracting, again, I think, some very interesting research and work on the educational side. Have you noticed anything as far as the government's response to all the businesses that are coming in, high-tech businesses especially? Has there been a response, perhaps even at the university level, that is reflective of the changes, or maybe something you're seeing from your contacts at GamerFest that you've developed, that you're seeing as how business and the landscape of education is changing in Ireland?
Well, certainly we're seeing more happening now in third level colleges and universities. So that can range from game development and design courses are now taking much more of a priority within universities, which is great to see. On the esports side, you mentioned the Lero Esports Lab in University of Limerick. So Mark Campbell is heading that up. As you mentioned, they're one of the leading research facilities in the world, looking at esports data, performance data, how that translates to players. So really, really exciting work there. We've had our first esports scholarship rolled out by Southeast Technological University. So that actually was launched just pre-pandemic. So that's great to see. From a GamerFest point of view, we've been deeply involved in the collegiate esports scene here in Ireland. So more and more colleges getting involved. Now, having said that, the colleges are still very much student-led in terms of the esports participation. So we're hoping that the colleges themselves are going to step up soon and support those esports teams in the colleges, just like they would traditional sports. And I think that's beginning to happen. We're trying to play our role in that. Next month at GamerFest in Dublin, we're going to showcase University College Dublin versus TU Dublin on our live esports stage. So that's really going to be the first time that Irish colleges have had an opportunity to go head-to-head in front of a live audience. And I think that's going to make it a lot more tangible for university presidents, university vice presidents to actually see a live audience. It's more tangible than online esports. They can see their logo, they can see the energy at the event. So that's going to be really positive. So from an education point of view, everything is moving in the right direction. I think you've probably seen in the US as well that, some traditional colleges might have been a little bit slow to move. Esports remains a very new space for many, as does gaming. So there's a lot of education required there for all stakeholders in Ireland, for other countries, to actually show the benefits of it, show what can be achieved with it. But on the whole, everything's moving in a really, really positive direction. And like I say, I think the pandemic had a huge part to play in that. It really put it on the radar of a lot of people, because even prior to that, with GamerFest events, I would find that we would have really good and interesting partnership discussions with a variety of brands or colleges. But ultimately, when that decision went up the chain of command within a company, you would get to that older generation that wouldn't really understand gaming, wouldn't understand esports, and that's really where the conversation would end. Since the pandemic, those senior decision makers now are a lot more open-minded around the opportunity. So on the whole, very, very positive. Lots to do, but going in a really exciting direction.
Well, and again, as you're putting on these events, I know from, again, previous conversations, and I know that a lot of my listeners are from an American audience where we want to put on an event, we go find the facility, we put it on. There's a very low barrier, I guess you can say, to entry. However, in previous conversations, I have heard when it comes to putting on events in Ireland, the insurance costs can tend to be astronomical. Have you found that as you're putting together GamerFest, that there's other things to consider rather than just picking the facility and what games are you going to play?
Yeah, well, there's always a whole range of decisions to be made. I think we're fortunate with the nature of our event. We haven't been overly impacted by the price of insurance, but to your point, there's a lot of insurance. Well, there are a number of insurance challenges in Ireland, particularly if you're running events that might be more activity focused, where there might be more opportunity for injury, for example. There are definitely challenges for those types of events as regards insurance. But outside of that, we have a good venue with the RDS in Dublin. It's a renowned venue, and we have plenty of space to scale the event. So next May, we'll have 5,000 visitors to GamerFest. We're looking to scale that to about 7,500 visitors by the end of the year, and beyond that going forward. After that, you're really developing relationships with game publishers, for example. So that's something we've been doing for a number of years. And if you're hoping to secure new game content from a publisher, for example, you need to have that credible relationship with them that you develop over time, because as you can imagine, they're very protective of their IP. They need to know that you run a reputable event. So fortunately now we're getting much more buy-in from publishers like Sega, like Warner Brothers, like EA Games, which is fantastic to see. Likewise, on the esports side of things, at our most recent GamerFest event last October, we worked directly with Riot Games. We worked directly with Ubisoft for a Valorant tournament and a Rainbow Six Siege tournament, respectively. And those tournaments we ran then were actually an official ladder for the bigger European series that they run. So great to see these brands showing an interest in Ireland. I think we're in a unique position now, particularly off the back of Brexit. You know, we're kind of the leading English-speaking country in the European Union, which is fantastic. So a lot of European audience are in touch with us about visiting GamerFest. Dublin is a great destination. It's got a huge amount going for it. So in addition to our Irish audience, you know, we're looking to that international audience as well. So there's huge potential. I think we're just scratching the surface at the present time. But yeah, lots more to come.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point that you bring up. Again, as we think about Brexit and the impact, because again, the previous conversation I had, the UK was still a member of the EU, and yes, the belief was that everything had to go through the UK. Why would you come to Ireland when you could have it in the UK? But as you're alluding to, yes, being the premier English-speaking nation now in Europe is a huge deal. It's something, I guess, you know, as an American, you don't necessarily think about because we all share a common language. But yes, I can definitely see how that would impact your place and space in the EU. But you also brought up a series of endemic esports brands. You brought up the Riots and the Ubisofts. But one of the interesting things about your journey, and you know, part of your journey isn't just in gaming. I mean, you got a degree in marketing from NUIG, National University of Ireland in Galway, which again now is called Galway University. But you also started with mainstream sponsors. You started with Lucozade, which is a treasured drink of many Irish children. It's almost like an energy drink, but it's kind of like our Gatorade, if you will. Air, which is for our US audience, is one of Ireland's premier mobile phone services. McDonald's is one of your current sponsors. Almost right out the gate a few years ago, you sorted a deal with On Post, which is the Irish postal system. Here in the US, to our disadvantage, I would argue that esports companies look first to businesses that already exist in the esports bubble and are now trying to figure out how to make themselves leap. Your decades-long career in marketing surely played a role and is one of the reasons you're an expert voice in this area. So you've mentioned in the past that you value long-term relationships over short-term strategies. And I think it's exactly the kind of advice we need over here. I'd love it if you could walk us through some of these ideas from your perspective.
I guess I've been fortunate because I've been on the other side of the fence, James, as a brand, working on sponsorship deals, working with rights holders and partners. So that's given me a good understanding of, you know, what a brand wants in terms of a sponsorship, in terms of a partnership. So as a rights holder like GamerFest, for example, it's very easy to talk about what we do, why a brand should join with us, what our packages are, what our rates are, and there you go, you know, take it or leave it. And that will get you so far, but it's not sustainable. So from my point of view, what always has been critical is, you know, understanding a sponsor, understanding a brand, putting yourself in their shoes. What's their objectives? What are they trying to achieve at the moment? What campaigns are they running? Who are they trying to engage with? And if you can't ascertain answers to those questions by, you know, the outside, then when you have a meeting with them, you ask them very directly, you know, what are your objectives? If you're looking at the gaming audience, for example, you're looking to engage with gamers. What do you hope to see out of this partnership? How can we facilitate that? How can we support that? And we develop partnerships on a bespoke basis to make sure that we're meeting those needs. We look to over-deliver in everything that we do. We try to make sure that, you know, a sponsorship renewal is a formality because we've gone above and beyond. I think too often what I saw when I was in a brand management role was, you know, a sponsorship deal is agreed and you get your benefits from it. You mightn't hear from that rights holder again until it's time for renewal. And you're kind of saying to
Really?
yourself, well, where have you been for the last 12 months? Yes, you've delivered on your signage commitments, your branding commitments. Yes, we saw our brand on social media, but very little checking in, very little management. So that always stuck with me. So that's something we work very hard on. Another thing I think you need to understand within the gaming and esports space, speaking with brands, is that oftentimes there's a nervousness there. There's a cautiousness. People don't necessarily understand gaming. They don't understand esports. They're nervous about taking a misstep that could blow back on them. So we also work very hard in terms of educating a brand about the best way to go about a particular partnership, a particular activation. What are the pitfalls, for example? If they're looking to get involved in an esports tournament, well, what game fits best with their brand? There's no point having an 18 plus shooter game with a family friendly brand, because you'll just scare them off. And sometimes you might even get that feedback that they say, well, that's actually not suitable for our brand. They'll just say, well, esports isn't for us if this is the type of thing that's being mentioned. So you really have to walk them through the opportunity, identify what they're trying to do, and support them in doing that. So it's really a two-way relationship, I think, is the best way to go about it. And I think as well, we've been fortunate too in that, GamerFest is a live event. So it's been a live event since before the pandemic. It's still a live event. So it's a little bit easier to get brands involved for a live event, because you can bring them to the event. There's the crowd, there's the energy, there's the branding, there's the signage, and all of the other good things that go with it. Whereas if you're promoting an online esports series, for example, you're talking about online audience, you're talking about Twitch engagement. These things are a little bit less tangible for traditional brands, which is why it can be difficult to get them over the line. So I think the fact we've had a live event has helped us. We've been able to translate that into our online esports activities, because we've been able to develop the relationships with the live event. So there's a whole myriad of things that goes into it. I think being a good listener, bottom line, will get you a long way in terms of sponsorship.
What about, I know a lot of times some of these companies and groups have internal data that sometimes they're happy to turn it over. Frankly, I've had conversations with companies myself where it's, well, tell me about your customer base. And you look at the data, and it's interesting how sometimes you have to almost present their numbers back to them in a lens that says, well, this is where gaming and esports can help you in this market and in this market. Even something as simple, like you said, Lucasade, which again is an energy drink. I mean, energy drinks is a low hanging fruit. I shouldn't use that one, but air. One of the biggest issues in Ireland for the longest time. For those who don't know, they do have a national broadband plan that seems to have been in development for I don't know, Stuart, tens of years. It seems like there's always been this talk about the national broadband plan, but it seems that the pandemic hopefully has accelerated and maybe allowed some of these brands to now realize that the impact of this national broadband plan and what it's having on industry on the island.
Yeah, so Air would be the biggest broadband provider in Ireland. They're an ongoing partner of GamerFest. They've been an absolutely fantastic partner. So again, a little bit like energy drinks to an extent, it's a good fit for a broadband provider to engage with the gaming audience. So we welcomed Air to GamerFest last October for the first time. And again, that was really a case of, teasing out what were their objectives for the event, what do they want to communicate. So for example, obviously speed of their network is a key message. So we had a discussion and we said, okay, well, we think sim racing is a good connection with speed. So on their stand then they ran a sim racing activation just to cover off that messaging. They also wanted to show their support for the gaming industry. They wanted to, highlight the fact that they're an Irish brand. So we developed a relationship with them and a very small Irish game developer here in Ireland called Fierce Fun Games that we would have a relationship with. So in addition to the sim racing on their stand, they also showcased this game from this aspiring Irish game developer, which worked really, really well. It's a nice show of support. And we did a number of other things with content creators in the gaming space here in Ireland with them. So it's all about identifying the best way to integrate a partner into GamerFest, into gaming. But they've been absolutely fantastic. We've renewed with them this year for GamerFest Summer, which is next month, and GamerFest Winter, which is in October. I think in terms of non-endemic brands, obviously the Irish Postal Service was an eye-opener. That came about in during the pandemic. So they have a money payment service as well called On Post Money, and they were rolling out a new product for young people called On Post Money Mate, which I guess would be comparable to Revolut Junior. They were looking at ways to engage with the young audience. They identified gaming as a way to do that. So we had a good relationship with their agency, and we started a discussion around how our online esports series could help grow awareness to the gaming community. So again, that was a partnership that worked fantastically well. It was a very, very new space for On Post, as you can imagine. You know, postal service, a traditional brand, traditional company, but a very, very progressive team in there now. And it was hugely successful, raised a lot of eyebrows in Ireland, which was fantastic to see them involved in esports. But I think one of the key takeaways from that partnership was that when it was announced internally within On Post, within the Irish Postal Service, their marketing team was absolutely blown away by the number of people that came forward and said, this is such an incredible partnership. I'm a gamer myself. I'm an esports player myself. Because traditionally, you know, in a career environment, some people aren't too quick to broadcast the fact that they're a gamer or that they love esports, because there has been a certain stigma associated with it, that it can be anti-career, for example. But it really came out in that On Post partnership, just how many people are gaming. And some of those people were senior stakeholders, senior executives within the business. So it was fantastic to see. And I always say that, you know, years gone by, people might be asked the question, well, why are you a gamer? I think the question in future years is going to be, why aren't you a gamer? Because, you know, it's absolutely a pillar of pop culture now. It's how people engage with each other. It's how they communicate. It's how they keep in touch. Again, the pandemic has really accelerated that fact. So it's interesting times for sure, but it's great to work with brands like that. We can help them navigate, and they see the value that we can bring. They see the work that we put into it. They appreciate that. And, you know, the sponsorship environment, particularly in Ireland, it's a pretty close-knit community. So if you can do good things for certain brands, I think word of mouth will stand to you. So that's all helped.
It is nice that you do have an island of 5 million, but 5 million highly educated English-speaking people. It does help, I guess, as you say, when it comes to the networking on a good return, if you will. That is definitely a positive. Now, we've talked a lot, or you've talked a lot about GamerFest. I'm ready to buy my ticket and just come over and just experience the whole thing, both in May and October. But for those of us who may not know fully what we can expect with GamerFest, what can you tell us about what this event will be on the 27th and 28th in Dublin?
So we'd have a wide variety of gaming content at the event. So our whole objective is, when we have visitors, by the time they leave event, they haven't had enough time to do everything. That's always our objective. So if you come to the event next month, for example, we've a range of things happening. We have the Williams Formula One team attending the event. They're going to be there with 5 cutting-edge sim racing rigs. So we're going to have a fastest lap challenge. They're going to have their professional sim racing driver there as well, doing a talk with the audience. So that's on the sim racing side. We're working with Sega, so we're going to be showcasing Sonic Frontiers at the event. So that's going to be really popular. We run a lot of cutting edge VR gaming, including mobile VR. So that's literally where you have a headset and you're walking around within the game. It's absolutely jaw-droppingly good. On the esports front, I mentioned we have our Irish Collegiate Esports Challenge with UCD and TUD. So that's going to be kicking off on the Saturday. There's a lot of excitement around that. And then after that, it's a range of gaming content. It's a community event. We have multiple live stages running panels. So it's usually really well received. It's growing all the time. And a big emphasis for us now is developing our industry zone at the event. So in events gone past, we would often invite small Irish game developers along. They can showcase their games, they can get feedback, visitors to the event get to play the games before they're actually released, which is really exciting. So we're actually developing that out now, and we're inviting more and more colleges, game developers to participate, to actually showcase to the Irish audience, how do you get involved in the games industry? What are the opportunities there? So this is something we're talking to government a lot about, the role that GamerFest can play in, showcasing the opportunities of the games industry here in Ireland. So we think there's huge scope to grow that area in particular. Ultimately, we'll have a dedicated B2B conference hall where we'll have panel discussions around industry matters, around game development. We'll have game developers there pitching for investment. So there's lots of exciting things happening. We're starting a funding round during the summer to help us scale the event as well. So we're kicking off discussions on that. We just have to park them now for the next 4 weeks as we prepare for the May event, but we'll be getting back into that again in June. So lots of exciting things happening. We're looking forward to the event next month. Lots to do, James, but no doubt we'll get there.
Now, with this event going to be in Dublin, will the the winter one be Galway, Cork, Swinford?
Dublin as well. Yeah, Dublin as well. James, Dublin as well. We'll probably have 7,500 people at our October event, and venue sizes outside of Dublin are a challenge. So as the event has grown, as you know, we started it here in Galway, we went to Limerick, and we progressively scale. But I think the level we're at now, it's going to be Dublin going forward twice a year.
And when people think about Ireland, again, the images in their mind is always very varied. Where are the hot spots, I guess you could say, right now where gaming and gaming culture is centered in Ireland? I mean, you've brought up Dublin many times. A lot of people associate Dublin as the city in Ireland, but again, I always tell people go outside of Dublin because you will be amazed at what you find. Well, where are the gaming hotspots right now in your mind?
I think it's throughout the country, to be honest, because when we were running our collegiate esports series, for example, we had just shy of 40 colleges from across the country, and it was the students, driving those esports teams, driving that engagement. So it's a cross section of society now, really. Gaming and esports. I said it's part of pop culture, but obviously it does gravitate towards the urban centres. So really, it's Dublin, it's Galway, Limerick, Cork. But no, it's great to see it. There's more and more engagement from across the country. Obviously, the network is there to play and engage in esports. I think GamerFest is playing a role in that. So we would see a lot of our audience travel from across Ireland to the event. So fantastic to see as well. So it's rising, I think, equally across the country, which is really important, because I think in the past in Ireland, sometimes things have become a little bit Dublin-centric. So it's important to kind of bring the whole community along with you. I think the fact that we started our GamerFest journey in Galway, in Limerick, that helped us develop that community outside of Dublin as well. And they've followed us to Dublin now, which is great.
Well, that is fantastic news. And again, the sustainability of being able to run 2 events in a year is tremendous in and of itself. Stuart, as we get ready to say goodbye for now, I'm sure we'll see you again here if I won't see you in Ireland first. And again, I'm sitting here wondering if I should just go on to Aer Lingus' website and book myself a ticket. Stuart, how can people connect with you and connect with GamerFest?
I think you can check out the GamerFest website, which is gamerfest.ie, or I'm to be found on LinkedIn as well. So Stuart Dempsey on LinkedIn. By all means, shoot me a DM, anyone that wants a chat. I think something we do a lot of is, we network as best we can. We talk to people when we can, no different than yourself, James. When we met, it's great to make the connections in the US, particularly if companies and individuals are looking towards Europe, looking towards Ireland, to see what we can do to facilitate opportunities for them. We want to develop GamerFest into one of the leading gaming events in Europe, and there's absolutely no reason we can't do that. I think we have the team, we have the venue, we have the destination in Dublin. So everything is going in a really good direction, but the more people we can engage in, the better. So I'm always open for a chat, or if I can give anyone a steer on sponsorship or branding or esports or gaming, I'm always happy to do so.
Well, and again, I think you and I have to have conversations about Connacht again, because it's, again, a very different year. The sports ground's getting rebuilt. You and I will chat offline about some of that stuff, but Stuart, is there anything we haven't covered or anything you want to promote before we close out outside of GamerFest?
No, I think we're good. I think we've boxed off most of what's happening over here. I think I need to get back to the States as well. I'm hoping to get to a couple of events next year, whether that's GDC. There's some great events over there, and I love getting across. I don't get across as much as I'd like, but it's certainly a priority for the next year or two. So hopefully we can catch you over there at some stage, James. You don't have to come to Ireland all the time. It's about time I went over there.
Well, I will say that if you're looking for something to do in summer, Games for Change is a conference I would recommend. It's in New York City, end of July. There'll be some really good people to connect with there. I may be speaking at it. I don't know yet, but when it comes to if you're looking for an event to attend, it's probably one I would recommend. So, Stuart, again, thank you so much for your time today. And to our listeners, please consider subscribing to the Academy of Esports podcast. You can get it on whatever platform you get your podcast from. You can also watch this stream on YouTube if you want to see myself and Stuart having the chat here, if you will, right on in your YouTube feed. And everything that we discussed GamerFest, we discussed Stuart's background and his LinkedIn post. We will have those in the show notes. Once again, I'm your host, James O'Hagan. Stuart Dempsey, thank you so much for being a guest on the Academy of Esports podcast today.
Absolute pleasure, James. Thank you.
That will do it for this week on the Academy of Esports. I've been your host, James O'Hagan. Esports are organized competitive video games allowing schools to redefine their athletic culture, diversify opportunities for student participation, promote good physical and mental health, increase collegiate scholarship pathways, and play games. We can never forget the importance of play. The mission of the Academy of Esports is to support these ideals. The vision of the Academy of Esports is for all students to experience the fun and joy of playing competitive video games. You may follow me on Twitter at Jim O'Hagan. That's at JIMOHAGAN, and through the Academy of Esports account at TAO Esports. It's a great way to get the latest blog posts, podcast episodes, and news coming out of esports and education. And remember, you can continue your engagement by going to www.taoesports.com. You can also connect through Facebook at www.facebook.com/TAOesports. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to our time again next week.